Why we love people who hurt us. There is a strange paradox in love, a paradox that lives deep within the human heart. It is the quiet ache of loving someone who, in their own way, hurts you, a kind of tenderness that refuses to let go, even when every instinct says it should. Why do we return to the same pain, the same faces that bring us both comfort and sorrow? Why does the heart reach out for the warmth of those who at times feel cold? Why is love sometimes intertwined with suffering, and how do we reconcile the beauty of affection with the weight of hurt? This is the story of why we love those who hurt us, and the complexities of the heart that pull us back again and again. There is a quiet ache that comes from loving someone who hurts you, a feeling that doesn't make sense but still exists, persistent, present, and painfully real. It is the strange pull between the desire to be close and the knowledge that distance might be the safest choice. It is a heart that yearns to love, even when it has been broken before, even when it knows the risk of opening itself again. Loving someone who hurts you feels like walking a thin line. On one side is hope, hope that things will be different, that love will heal, that the person will change. On the other side is reality, the understanding that nothing has changed, that the pattern persists, that the same pain is likely to come again. And yet, you return. Again and again, the heart pulls you back into a cycle that feels familiar, comforting, even when it is also the source of your greatest wounds. It doesn't make sense, yet it does. There is an unspoken belief that love should be unconditional, that it should endure, that it will somehow fix what is broken, both in the other person and in yourself. The push and pull is subtle. It's not always dramatic or visible. It's the lingering look, the promise that this time will be different, the whisper of a hope that flickers even in the darkest moments. It's the emotional weight of being tied to someone whose actions don't align with their words, whose love feels more like an illusion than a reality. And still, you reach out. You stay connected, you hold on, because the idea of loving, of being loved, feels too precious to let go of. You may ask yourself, why do I stay? Why do I keep loving someone who has hurt me? But the answers are not simple. They are not answers you can just rationalize away. They are deeply ingrained in the way you understand love, in the way you have learned to give and receive affection. Sometimes, the person you love is not even aware of the harm they cause. Their love may be all they know, and yet it may not be the love you need, not the love that will heal you. But still, the heart stays. The truth is, love is complex. It's not always neat or straightforward. It doesn't come with a clear map of where it will lead. And so, when it feels real, when the affection is there, even if wrapped in dysfunction, the heart clings to it. The heart wants to believe in what it feels. The heart wants to trust that this time, things will be different. This is the paradox of attachment, the fear of letting go, even when the mind knows it may be for the best. It is the fear that without this love, you will have nothing, that if you walk away, you will be left with a hole that no one else can fill. The attachment feels too strong, too ingrained in your sense of who you are, and so you stay, often at the cost of your own emotional well-being. Loving someone who hurts you is not always about being blind to their faults. It's about the emotional investment that binds you to them. It's about the history you share, the moments of tenderness that keep you tethered, the belief that if you just love hard enough, if you just give enough, things will change. And in that giving, there's a quiet hope that it will all work out in the end, even when the evidence says otherwise. This chapter is the recognition of that paradox, the tender, fragile line between hope and hurt, love and self-preservation. It's the soft understanding that loving someone who hurts you is not about weakness or being naive, but about the complexity of the human heart, the heart that believes in connection, even when it's been bruised, the heart that hopes, even when it's been let down before. Attachment is not something we consciously choose. It is woven into us, taught to us long before we understand its complexities. It begins with the first touch, the first gaze, the first care we receive from another. As children, we learn that love is not always about consistency. It is about what we are given and how we are seen, even when that love is fragmented, even when it is inconsistent. The roots of attachment are often formed in childhood. The way we are held, the way we are cared for, the way we are seen. A child's heart is an open book, waiting to be written on by the world around them. If a child grows up in a home where love is conditional, where affection is given intermittently, where emotional warmth comes and goes like the changing weather, that child learns something profound. Love is a game of waiting. Love is something you have to earn, something you have to prove, something you have to anticipate. The child learns to watch the adults around them carefully, to track their moods, to measure the spaces between words, the pauses in the air, the shifting of emotions. They begin to feel that their worth is something to be earned, something that is fleeting. And they learn to love not in the pure, unconditional way that they were meant to, but in a way that feels unstable, uneven, and sometimes even painful. The foundation of attachment, built on inconsistency, becomes something that is carried into adulthood. As we grow, we do not always recognize the pattern we carry. We learn to love not from a place of fullness, but from a place of need. A need for connection that was never fully met as children, a need to be loved in ways that may not always feel healthy. We may find ourselves drawn to relationships that mirror this early experience. We seek out love that feels familiar, even if that familiarity comes with pain. We may not consciously understand why we are drawn to people who bring both warmth and coldness, but subconsciously, we seek the love we were taught to expect. A love that is unpredictable. A love that keeps us guessing. A love that asks us to work for it. The roots of attachment also grow in the way we learn to care for others. Children who grow up in homes where emotional needs are neglected may become adults who suppress their own needs. They learn that their needs are unimportant, that they should care for others, even when their own hearts are empty. They give love without asking for it in return, investing themselves in others, but never allowing themselves to be truly seen. This self-suppression becomes part of their emotional landscape, and they continue to seek relationships where they can give, but never fully receive. This dynamic also plays out in those who become caretakers for others. People who grew up in environments where they had to be emotionally strong for others may seek out relationships where they can play the same role. They look for partners who need saving, who are emotionally distant or unavailable, so they can fulfill the role of the giver, the caretaker, the one who loves, even when the love is not returned in the way it should be. This need to be needed, this emotional dependence on others to fulfill the gaps in our own sense of worth, is rooted in those early childhood experiences. It is the belief that love is something to be earned, something to be worked for, something that requires sacrifice. And so we find ourselves in relationships where we give endlessly but rarely receive, where we stay even when the love feels incomplete, because we have been taught that love requires endurance, that it requires patience, that it requires us to stay even when the love we are giving is not being returned in the way it should be. The roots of attachment also tie into our fears: fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being unworthy. These are fears planted in us long ago, nourished by those early relationships where love was not always a safe place. And so, we stay in relationships where we are not fully seen, where our needs are not met, because we are afraid of being alone, afraid of being abandoned, afraid that love is something that we must earn and never fully receive. This chapter uncovers the deep, often hidden roots of attachment, the roots that shape the way we love as adults. It shows how early experiences with caregivers, whether loving or inconsistent, plant seeds that grow into the patterns of attachment we carry with us. It is through these roots that we learn not only how to love, but how to accept love in return, often through the lens of what we were taught, whether consciously or subconsciously, as children. Why do we seek out the very people who hurt us? Why does love, in its most painful form, feel so deeply familiar? It is not simply a matter of desire. It is the mind's way of connecting pleasure with pain, of binding affection with the discomfort of unmet needs, and of creating a sense of attachment that feels both deeply satisfying and incredibly hurtful. The psychology of loving someone who hurts you lies in the complex web of intermittent reinforcement, a psychological principle that explains how our brains become hooked on inconsistent rewards. When we experience emotional highs and lows in a relationship, the brain doesn't just register the pain, it also registers the pleasure of the moments when love feels real, authentic, and fulfilling. In this dance of highs and lows, the brain begins to tie pleasure with pain. Each moment of emotional warmth or affection becomes more significant because it is so fleeting, so unpredictable. In the absence of constant affection, we learn to want that affection even more. When we are loved for a brief moment, we remember it, hold on to it as if it is the key to our survival. The brain becomes addicted to the rush of those moments, as if they are life-saving. This creates a cycle, a pattern of seeking the warmth of love, only to endure the cold when it slips away. This pattern is often called trauma bonding, a psychological attachment that forms when a person is caught between emotional extremes: love, affection, neglect, abandonment. The person begins to associate love with unpredictability, with uncertainty, and with emotional confusion. They come to believe that love, in its purest form, is something you have to earn, something that requires patience, waiting, and enduring pain in the process. This is how love becomes confused with suffering. In these relationships, the brain doesn't see the emotional harm. It only sees the rush of affection, the fleeting moments of connection, and associates those moments with the ultimate sense of fulfillment. The deeper the emotional pain, the stronger the pull toward the moments of pleasure. The cycle grows. The need for emotional highs grows stronger, and the moments of hurt become something the mind can endure in exchange for the sweetness of love. The concept of cognitive dissonance is key in understanding why we keep returning to people who hurt us. Cognitive dissonance happens when our beliefs and actions don't align. We know the truth, that we are being hurt, that we are not receiving the love we deserve, but our minds justify the inconsistency. We make excuses for the behavior of the other person. We remember the times when they were kind, when they showed affection, and in those moments, we tell ourselves that it was worth it. We rationalize the hurt because we want to believe in the love, even when the evidence contradicts it. We hold on to the good moments, bury the bad ones, and convince ourselves that it will get better. This belief is tied to something deeper, the way we understand our own worth. When we experience intermittent affection, we begin to attach our sense of value to the inconsistent love we receive. We believe that we have to work for love, that we have to endure hardship to earn it, that love comes with a price. This pattern was often set in motion during childhood, when we learned that affection was earned, not given freely. As adults, we bring this belief into our relationships, seeking out situations where love is unpredictable and our worth is tested by how much we can endure. But the cost of this cycle is high. It takes a toll on the self-esteem, on emotional health, and on the ability to trust in healthy forms of love. The more we are caught in these patterns, the harder it becomes to understand that love can be stable, consistent, without the need for pain. The deeper the attachment to someone who hurts us, the more we normalize the pain as part of the process of love. We begin to believe that love without suffering is impossible. The mind, caught in this cycle of love and hurt, becomes emotionally exhausted. It searches for answers, but the answers only lead to more confusion. It longs for affection, but when that affection comes, it is fleeting, just out of reach. This emotional tug-of-war leaves us feeling both exhausted and bound to the person who causes the pain. We wonder, why do I keep coming back? But the truth is buried in the brain's deep-seated need for connection, for reassurance, for the belief that if we hold on long enough, we will be loved in the way we've always wanted. But this belief is not grounded in reality. It is rooted in the emotional conditioning that the brain has learned to associate love with pain. There is a rhythm to the heart that follows the dance of hope and hurt, a pattern that is both comforting and disorienting, a rhythm that moves you forward, even when you know it will pull you back. The heart beats in sync with the hope that love can heal, and yet, in the same breath, it carries the scars of past wounds, past betrayals, past disappointments. The dance is not easy. It is the careful balancing act between wanting to believe and knowing the cost of belief. At the core of this emotional dance is the quiet, persistent hope. The hope that things will be different this time, that the person you love will change, that the love you give will finally be returned the way you need. It is the longing for transformation, for redemption, for the moment when the love you've held on to in silence becomes the love you've always dreamed of. But alongside this hope, there is the steady rhythm of hurt. It is the ache that accompanies every time you've been let down, every time your heart was bruised by the inconsistency of affection, every time you were left wondering, do they love me? The hurt doesn't leave. It lingers like a shadow, waiting to remind you of the risks you've taken, the parts of yourself you've exposed, the vulnerabilities that have been exploited. And yet, despite the hurt, you stay. Why? Because hope is a powerful thing. It is the belief that if you just give a little more, hold on a little longer, show a little more love, things will change. Hope tells you that love is worth the wait, even if the wait is endless. This is the paradox, the dance of hope and hurt that keeps people tethered to relationships that are not fully fulfilling, to relationships where love is not consistent, but where the moments of connection feel so precious, so full of possibility, that they keep you coming back. The hope that things can change becomes the anchor, even as the hurt threatens to pull you under. It is the belief that the love you've shared has the power to transform, to heal, to make everything better. But the reality is often different. The more you hope, the more you invest, the more you lose yourself in the dance. The line between hope and hurt begins to blur, and soon, it is difficult to tell whether you are in love or in pain. You begin to mistake the intense emotions for the intensity of love itself. The ups and downs, the extremes of affection and detachment, become the emotional landscape you know best. And in this landscape, it feels normal to give more than you receive, to wait for love to be fully given, even when the evidence shows that it may never come. This dance of hope and hurt also creates a space where emotional needs are not fully voiced, where unspoken expectations weigh heavily on the heart. The mind tells you that love should be enough, that your love should be the force that changes the relationship. But the heart knows that love, in its purest form, does not come with conditions. It is the paradox again, the belief that love will save even when it is clear that love, in its current form, is causing harm. There is a deep emotional investment in this dance. It is not just about the person you love. It is about the parts of yourself you have given in the process. Each hope, each wish for change, is an offering of the heart. Each disappointment, each letdown, feels like a piece of your soul pulled away, bit by bit. And yet, despite this, you stay, because hope is the thread that holds everything together. This chapter is the reflection on that dance, the dance that keeps you moving back and forth between hope and hurt. It is the understanding that the heart does not simply choose to stay in pain, but that it clings to hope because it believes, somewhere deep inside, that love is worth the risk. And yet, in this dance, there is a quiet truth. The love that asks you to endure hurt is not the love that will heal you. The love that causes you to question your worth, to feel unfulfilled, to wonder if you are enough, is not the love that is meant for you. But the heart does not always know this immediately. It takes time to understand that true love does not need to be earned through suffering, through endurance, through silence. True love is steady, it is kind. It is a love that does not ask you to hurt in order to feel connected. The dance is not easy to end. It is ingrained in the way we learn to love, in the patterns we have carried with us for so long. But the moment you recognize the dance for what it is, a cycle of hope and hurt that never truly fulfills you, the first step toward freedom is taken. You begin to see that love does not have to be a tug of war between wanting and losing, between hoping and hurting. Love can be steady, consistent, whole. And in that understanding, you find the space to let go of the dance and the strength to find something better. There comes a moment, soft, almost imperceptible, when the heart begins to wake up to the truth. It is the quiet realization that love, in its purest form, does not demand suffering. It is the moment when the cycle of hope and hurt begins to lose its grip and the realization settles in, like a gentle breath of air moving through a still room. This moment does not arrive with fanfare or loud declarations. It is a subtle shift, a small but profound understanding that love, when it is real, does not require pain to exist. It is in this moment that the mind begins to recognize the patterns of emotional investment that have gone unreturned, patterns of attachment that were never truly healthy. For so long, the dance between hope and hurt felt like normalcy, felt like the only kind of love that was possible. But now, in the soft quiet of the turning point, something changes. It is no longer a question of how much you can endure, how much you can hope for, how much you can sacrifice. Now, the question becomes, what does love without hurt look like? And the realization begins to form. Love is not about enduring pain in the hope of something better. Love is about gentleness, about presence, about balance. This turning point doesn't come from a single decision. It comes from the accumulation of small, quiet awakenings. It happens when the heart stops looking for answers from someone else and begins to ask itself the question, what do I need? What do I deserve? What kind of love will make me feel whole? At first, this recognition can feel uncomfortable. It is a new kind of truth, one that does not align with the patterns of the past, one that asks you to let go of familiar suffering. The mind, conditioned to expect love to come with difficulty, resists the idea that love can be easy, can be free of pain, can be stable. But as this truth takes root, there is a quiet release. It is not dramatic, but it is profound. You begin to see yourself, your worth, in a new light. The love you offer others becomes a reflection of the love you offer yourself. No longer is love a barter, a transaction where you give in hopes of receiving. Now, it is a giving that is free, unconditional, complete in itself. The turning point is not about rejecting love entirely, but about learning to see love clearly. It is the recognition that love is not about proving your worth through suffering. It is about mutual respect, mutual care, and mutual understanding. It is a love that builds, not one that breaks down. It is a love that sees you as whole, not something to be fixed. This moment of clarity is often accompanied by grief. Grief for the love you thought you needed. Grief for the attachment you once believed was necessary. Grief for the time spent in relationships that demanded too much of you. But this grief is not the same as pain. It is the grief of understanding, of letting go of illusions, of stepping into a new understanding of what love can be. You begin to realize that the person you have been hoping for is not someone who can save you. You are the one who has the power to save yourself. You are the one who has the power to decide what kind of love you deserve, what kind of love you are worthy of. This recognition does not require anger or bitterness. It requires peace. The peace that comes with understanding that your worth is not determined by how much you can endure. The turning point is a gentle awareness, a shift from self-sacrifice to self-respect. It is the moment when you understand that love does not thrive in pain, but in the quiet spaces of mutual understanding, in the shared moments of warmth, in the commitment to care for one another without compromising your own well-being. This moment of clarity marks the beginning of a new chapter, one where love is no longer a test of endurance, but a practice of gentleness. It is a turning point where the heart begins to heal, not because of someone else, but because it has learned to love itself first. Letting go is never as simple as just walking away. It is not a clean break, a sudden shift, or an abrupt ending. It is a slow unraveling, a quiet surrender, a soft acknowledgement that something has served its purpose, but its time has passed. The illusion that love can heal what is broken often holds tight, even as the heart begins to see the truth. It whispers to you, promising that if you just try harder, if you just love more, everything will be okay. But in the quiet moments of clarity, you begin to see the illusion for what it is, a mask, a comforting story that kept you tied to something that was never meant for you. Letting go is not about severing the connection, not about erasing the love you once felt. It is about releasing the hold that love has over your heart, understanding that love, in its truest form, does not require pain. It does not demand suffering in order to exist. And as you begin to accept this truth, the illusion begins to lose its power. You no longer need to fight for something that was never whole to begin with. You no longer need to convince yourself that the love you gave is enough. You realize that your love was always enough, but it was given to the wrong place. The process of letting go is not linear. It is full of moments of resistance, moments when you reach for something that no longer serves you, moments when you question whether you are making the right decision. There are memories to grieve. There are hopes to release. There are dreams of what could have been that need to be put to rest. But each moment of doubt is met with the steady, soft voice of truth. You are worthy of a love that does not hurt. You are worthy of a love that is steady, kind, and mutual. In letting go, you are not abandoning love. You are reclaiming your own heart. You are learning that love does not need to be earned through suffering, that it does not need to be worked for, that it does not need to prove its value by enduring pain. You are learning that love is something that should nourish, that should lift you up, that should make you feel whole, not empty. This process of releasing the illusion can be tender, gentle, and even beautiful. It is the moment when you stop searching outside yourself for validation, when you begin to see that your worth was never tied to the love of another. It is the moment when you stop asking, "Am I enough?" and start answering, "I am enough." Letting go also means releasing the fear that without this love, you will be alone, that you will not find something better. The fear that you will never be worthy of a love that does not hurt. But in letting go, you begin to understand that the fear of loss is only the fear of the unknown. What you are letting go of is not love itself, but a version of love that was always incomplete. What you are making space for is the kind of love that will truly fulfill you, the kind of love that will offer peace instead of chaos, steady warmth instead of fleeting warmth. As you release the illusion, You begin to feel lighter. There is room for breathing again, room for feeling without the weight of expectation, room for connection without the fear of being hurt. You no longer need to keep proving yourself, no longer need to show that you can handle the pain. You begin to realize that your worth was never about how much you could endure, but about how much you could truly give and receive in a balanced way. And in this realization, the burden of the past begins to lift. Letting go of the illusion is not an act of rejection. It is an act of acceptance. It is the acceptance that love should not hurt, that love should never require you to lose yourself, that love should be mutual, not transactional. And as you let go, you create space for something new to grow. Not a new person, not a new relationship, but a new understanding of yourself. A self that is whole, complete, and worthy of a love that reflects that truth. This chapter is the beginning of freedom, freedom from the illusion that love is always tied to suffering. Freedom to love without fear, freedom to love without the weight of past pain. And in this freedom, you begin to understand that love, in its truest form, will never hurt you. It will only heal you. There is a moment of quiet liberation that comes when you finally learn to love yourself fully. It is not the kind of love that demands perfection or self-sacrifice. It is the kind of love that simply acknowledges your worth, your beauty, your complexity. It is the kind of love that fills you, not in the way that others might fill you, but in a way that you can only fill yourself. It is the freedom that comes from understanding that your heart does not need to depend on anyone else's love to feel complete. For so long, you may have been searching outside yourself, looking for validation, for affection, for someone to make you feel whole. You may have believed that if only someone else could see your worth, if only someone else could love you in just the right way, you would be complete. But the truth is, the journey to wholeness begins not in the arms of another, but in the arms of your own self-acceptance. Loving yourself is not about narcissism, nor is it about a perfect image of who you are. It is about embracing your imperfections, your flaws, your struggles, and seeing them as parts of the whole that makes you uniquely you. It is the understanding that you are worthy of love, not because of what you do, but because of who you are, in all of your messy, imperfect humanity. This kind of self-love does not come from a place of arrogance, but from a deep understanding of your own value. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that you do not need anyone else to complete you, because you are already complete. You do not need to prove your worth to anyone because you already know your worth. And in that knowing, there is peace. The freedom of loving yourself is also about letting go of the need for approval. When you love yourself, you no longer need to seek validation from others, because you already hold the deepest validation within you. You no longer need to measure your worth based on someone else's affection, approval, or attention. You no longer need to justify your emotions or actions to anyone, because you know that you are enough just as you are. This freedom allows you to release the past, the mistakes, the hurt, the disappointment, the failed relationships that once defined your sense of self. When you love yourself, you are no longer bound by what has happened to you or by what others have said or done. You are free to be who you truly are, without the weight of the past holding you down. The freedom of loving yourself also means allowing yourself to grow. It means accepting that you are a work in progress, that you are always evolving, always learning, always becoming. Self-love is not about being stagnant or static. It is about embracing the journey of becoming and allowing yourself the space to evolve into the person you are meant to be. It is the freedom to make mistakes, to try new things, to step outside your comfort zone, and to give yourself the grace to fail without judgment. This kind of love requires patience. It requires the willingness to sit with yourself, to be present with your own feelings, to embrace your own company. It requires letting go of the need to be constantly validated by others and instead finding validation within yourself. It is about learning to enjoy your own presence, to be kind to yourself, and to acknowledge your own efforts and achievements, no matter how small they may seem. And in the freedom of loving yourself, you begin to attract a different kind of love, the kind that is mutual, gentle, and reciprocal. When you love yourself fully, you create space for relationships that honor you, that meet your needs, that respect your boundaries, and that nurture your soul. No longer do you need to chase after love, because you will already be filled with it, and the love that comes to you will be an extension of the love you have for yourself. The freedom of loving yourself is not the end of the journey, it is just the beginning. It is the beginning of a new kind of connection, not only with others, but with yourself. It is the foundation from which you can build relationships that are not based on need, but on mutual respect, understanding, and love. As you embrace this freedom, you begin to understand the quiet truth. You are worthy of love, not because you need it to complete you, but because you are already whole.